My name is Julie, and my journey begins in a lively home brimming with love, though it wasn't always distributed equally. Our house echoed with the sounds of laughter, tears, and tiny footsteps. I was the second oldest, with my brother Sean, who is just a year older, and two younger sisters, Olivia and Rachel, born during my early teenage years. From a young age, I was taught responsibility. While other kids spent their time playing, I was in our modest kitchen, helping Mom prepare meals or looking after Olivia and Rachel. It wasn't always easy, but those experiences instilled in me values of kindness and dedication. Our parents, Dennis and Diane, worked tirelessly to provide for us. Dad spent long hours at a local factory, while Mom juggled part-time jobs along with managing the household. We didn't have much, but they ensured we always had food on the table and a roof over our heads. Yet, I couldn't ignore the preferential treatment Sean received from our parents. "Sean's the eldest," Dad would say with pride, tousling his hair. "He's carrying on the family legacy." As the years passed, this disparity became more evident. When Sean graduated from high school, he was gifted a car. When my turn came, I received a card and a promise to help with college expenses. It wasn't that my parents didn't care for me, they did, but the favoritism was clear, and it influenced the dynamics within our family. Olivia and Rachel often looked up to me, treating me almost like a second mother. I embraced that role wholeheartedly, striving to be a positive example for them. After finishing high school, I set my sights on college. True to their word, my parents had saved some money for our education. It wasn't enough to cover all the expenses, but it was a good starting point. I chose to pursue a degree in finance, hoping it would lead to a stable career. College was just as challenging as I'd imagined, filled with late-night study sessions at the library, but I tackled every obstacle with determination. Even with a heavy workload, I always made time to help Mom with house chores. I never let my busy schedule stop me from calling home. Mom would update me on the latest family happenings, Dad would offer a brief but warm hello, and Olivia and Rachel would excitedly argue over who got to speak to me first. As for Sean, I rarely heard from him directly. Most of the updates about his life came from Mom. She'd share how he had started working at a local company and wasn't interested in furthering his education. Our parents, especially Dad, were incredibly proud of him. "Your brother's doing great in business," Dad would often say during our occasional chats. "He has a knack for it." I'd always agree, though his success sometimes sparked a flicker of competitiveness in me. Still, I reminded myself that life wasn't a competition. We each had our own unique journey to follow. Over the years, I poured my energy into my studies and part-time jobs, determined to make the most of the opportunity my parents had given me. Their financial support didn't cover everything, but it was a significant help, and I deeply appreciated their sacrifices. I didn't want to let them down. Graduation day arrived before I knew it. Standing in my cap and gown, clutching my diploma, I scanned the crowd for my family. There they were, Mom and Dad, beaming with pride, Olivia and Rachel enthusiastically waving, and even Sean, standing a little off to the side with a faint smile. After the ceremony, Mom wrapped me in a tight hug, tears glistening in her eyes. "We're so proud of you, honey," she said. Dad gave my shoulder a pat, his usual understated but heartfelt gesture. "You've done well, Julie. Now it's your time to shine." We celebrated with a family dinner, during which I shared my plans to stay in the city and begin my career. While I had considered moving back home, the career prospects in the city were too promising to pass up. My entry-level role at a financial firm demanded long hours, limiting my visits home to holidays and the occasional long weekend. Still, I stayed connected, making regular phone calls and surprising Olivia and Rachel with care packages to remind them I was thinking of them. Everything shifted dramatically about 8 years after I first left for college. During a visit home, I was sitting in the kitchen with Mom, chatting over coffee when my phone rang. The call was from my boss. "Julie, I have some news," he said in a serious tone. "We're opening a new branch in your hometown, and I want you to lead it. It's a big promotion, but you'd have to move. Are you interested?" Without hesitation, I replied, "Yes, I'm definitely interested." When the official job offer came through, My company even offered to cover the cost of an apartment. But Mom and Dad were insistent. "Come on, Julie," Mom said with a smile. "It'll be just like old times." I couldn't bring myself to say no. On my first day back, walking into our old house felt surreal. It seemed smaller than I remembered. Olivia and Rachel, now teenagers, greeted me with warm hugs. Sean had moved out and was living on his own, already engaged to be married. Later that evening, after unpacking, I sat with Olivia and Rachel in our shared childhood bedroom. It felt good to be home again, listening to their stories and laughing together. "So, tell me about Sean's fiancée," I said, curious. The two of them exchanged a glance. "Her name's Evelyn," Olivia began cautiously. "She's different." Rachel nodded in agreement. "Yeah, she's from a really wealthy family. Her dad owns the company Sean works for now." There was something about their tone that piqued my curiosity. "Different how?" I pressed. But they both just shrugged and quickly changed the subject. I decided to let it go for the moment. Over the next few weeks, I was swamped with work, focused on setting up the new branch office. The long hours were challenging, but I genuinely enjoyed the work. Evenings were spent catching up with family, helping Olivia and Rachel with their homework or chatting with Mom while she cooked dinner. Then, one Monday evening, as we all sat together around the dining table, the doorbell rang. Mom jumped up to answer it. "It's Sean and Evelyn," she called out, her voice tinged with excitement. I stood up eagerly, looking forward to seeing my brother and meeting his fiancée for the first time. Sean walked in first, looking polished in a suit. Trailing behind him was a tall, slender woman with impeccably styled hair and clothes that clearly cost more than I made in a month. Evelyn scanned the house with an air of disdain, her expression barely masking her disapproval. "Oh, how quaint," she said dismissively, picking up one of Mom's cherished knickknacks as if it were a relic from another world. I watched in bewilderment as Mom and Dad fawned over her, asking if she needed anything and apologizing profusely for even the smallest things. Meanwhile, Olivia and Rachel sat silently, their eyes cast downward as Evelyn made a rude remark about Rachel's outfit. Unable to hold back, I pulled Olivia aside. "What's going on?" I whispered sharply. "Why is everyone letting her behave like this?" Olivia sighed heavily. "Sean works for her dad now," she explained. "It's a big deal. Mom and Dad are terrified that if we upset her, Sean could lose his job." I was stunned. This didn't feel like the family I grew up with. We had always stood up for one another, never letting anyone look down on us. Things only deteriorated during dinner. Evelyn made cutting remarks about my job and even my clothes, her tone dripping with condescension. I had reached my limit. "Look," I said firmly, "I don't know who you think you are, but in this house, we treat each other with respect. If you can't do that, maybe you shouldn't be here." The room fell into an uncomfortable silence. Evelyn's face contorted with fury as she grabbed her purse and stormed out. Sean hesitated for a moment, looking conflicted, but ultimately followed her out the door. As soon as they were gone, Mom and Dad turned on me. "Julie, how could you?" Mom cried, her voice trembling. "You know how important this is for Sean." Dad's expression was filled with disappointment. "You need to control your temper," he scolded. "This could ruin everything for your brother." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My parents, who had always taught me to stand up for myself, were now urging me to apologize for doing exactly that. They begged me incessantly to apologize and be the bigger person. Exhausted from their nagging, I reluctantly agreed to try to make peace with Evelyn, though the idea left a bitter taste in my mouth. The weeks sped by, and soon Sean's wedding became the only topic of conversation in our house. Evelyn, true to form, seized control of every detail, treating the entire event as if she were commanding a military operation rather than planning a celebration. She subjected us to endless dress fittings, insisting we purchase expensive gowns to match the venue's opulent style. When I hesitantly suggested something more affordable, Evelyn responded with a mocking laugh. "Oh, Julie," she sneered, her tone dripping with condescension, "we can't have you looking cheap at my wedding, can we?" Next came the bachelorette party, which Evelyn organized with the precision of a general. She distributed a detailed itinerary packed with mandatory activities and multiple outfit changes. Though I found it absurd, Mom's constant pleading glances kept me quiet. Then came the bombshell. Evelyn announced that we were expected to perform a choreographed dance at the wedding, not just a simple, fun dance, but an elaborate, theatrical performance. "It'll be the highlight of the reception," she said enthusiastically, her eyes gleaming. "You'll all look so cute." My stomach churned. Years ago, I had injured my back in a car accident, and dancing had since become a painful, near impossible activity. Still, I tried to convince myself it wouldn't be that bad. I was wrong. It was much worse. When I arrived at the dance studio for practice, the choreographer enthusiastically outlined a routine, splits, lifts, and other physically demanding moves that would challenge even professional dancers. Meanwhile, Evelyn paced back and forth, barking commands like a drill sergeant. "Come on, ladies.
Put your backs into it,"
she shouted, clapping her hands for emphasis. I pulled out my phone, intending to record the practice for review later. But as I watched, I quickly realized there was no way I could participate in this routine. It was beyond unreasonable. "Hold on," I interjected, stepping forward. "This is insane. We're not circus performers, Evelyn. I can't do these moves." Evelyn's expression darkened with anger. "What do you mean you can't? Of course you can. Stop being difficult, Julie." I shook my head firmly. "No, I mean it. I have a back injury from years ago, and this kind of dancing just isn't possible for me." That's when Evelyn completely unraveled. Her voice rose in a shrill tirade, hurling insults at me left and right. But what she said next stunned me. "Fine," she screamed. "If you won't dance, then you owe Sean $10,000 as a wedding gift. It's only fair since you're ruining my special day." I stood there, speechless, as Evelyn's words echoed in my mind. Desperate, I glanced at Olivia and Rachel, hoping they'd back me up. But they just stared down at the floor, their nervous silence confirming my worst fears. They were too intimidated to speak out against Evelyn. That was the breaking point for me. "You know what, Evelyn? Keep your stupid dance," I snapped, my voice trembling with anger. "I'm out of here." I stormed out of the studio, my hands shaking as I clutched my phone, which had been recording the entire ordeal. The chaotic rehearsal, Evelyn's outrageous demands, and her harsh tirade, all of it was captured. When I got home, I slammed the door behind me, my frustration boiling over. Mom and Dad were in the living room, their faces quickly turning concerned as they noticed my expression. "What happened?" Mom asked, setting her knitting aside. Still seething, I recounted everything: the absurd dance routine, Evelyn's unhinged behavior, and the jaw-dropping demand for $10,000 as a wedding gift. I expected them to be shocked and angry on my behalf, but their reactions blindsided me. Dad's face turned an alarming shade of red. "Julie, how could you?" he bellowed. "After everything we've talked about, this wedding is crucial for Sean's future. You need to apologize to Evelyn right now and agree to do the dance." I stared at him in disbelief. Apologize? For what? For having a back injury? For standing up for myself? "Stop being so selfish," Dad roared back. "This isn't about you. It's about Sean's happiness and success." I felt the sting of his words deep in my chest. "So my happiness doesn't matter?" I fired back, my voice quivering with emotion. "What about my health? Is that irrelevant to you?" The argument escalated quickly. Voices were raised, accusations flew, and tears began to fall. I held my ground, adamant that I wouldn't give in to Evelyn's ridiculous and selfish demands. Then Dad delivered the final blow. "If you can't support your brother and his fiancée," he said coldly, "then maybe you shouldn't be here at all." A heavy silence fell over the room. His words hit me like a punch to the gut, and I realized there was no reasoning with them. That night, I packed a bag. Mom made a feeble attempt to stop me, her voice shaking as she pleaded for me to reconsider, but I couldn't stay. The next morning, I moved into the small apartment my company had offered me. It was bare and lonely, but it was mine. When Sean and Evelyn's wedding day arrived, I didn't attend. The thought of watching my family cater to Evelyn's every whim was too much to bear. Instead, I spent the day alone in my apartment, torn between rage and heartbreak. A few days later, my phone buzzed relentlessly with notifications. Curious and apprehensive, I opened social media and saw the source of the chaos. Evelyn had posted a dramatic, embellished story about how I had supposedly tried to ruin her perfect day. She painted herself as the innocent victim and me as the bitter, spiteful sister-in-law. Her post quickly gained traction. The comments were even worse. Relatives I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly emerged as armchair critics, calling me selfish and cruel. Even Olivia and Rachel had liked the post, a betrayal that cut deeply. Soon, the phone calls started. Aunts, uncles, and cousins took turns berating me, expressing their disappointment and telling me how ashamed I should feel. Olivia tried to reach out once, sending me a hesitant text that said she missed me. When I suggested meeting up, she backed off, saying Evelyn wouldn't approve. I didn't try again. The damage was done. I pushed past her into the living room, my determination stronger than my hesitation. Dad was there, sitting in his favorite armchair with the newspaper in hand. He looked up, frowning when he saw me. "We need to talk," I said firmly, standing in the middle of the room. "About what?" Dad asked, his tone cold. "About Evelyn and how she's treating Olivia and Rachel," I replied, my voice steady despite the anger boiling inside me. Mom's face hardened. "I don't know what Rachel's been telling you," she started, but I cut her off. "Don't," I said sharply. "Don't deny it. I know everything. How can you let this happen? They're your daughters." Dad stood up, his voice sharp and defensive. "Now you listen, Julie. Evelyn is family. She's given Sean opportunities we could only dream of. If the girls need to help out a bit, that's a small price to pay." "A little help?" I repeated, my voice rising. "She's treating them like slaves, and you're okay with that?" Mom spoke up then, her voice weak. "You're exaggerating. The girls are fine. They're just what, Mom?" I interrupted. "Just being abused by their sister-in-law while you look the other way?" Dad's face turned red with anger. "That's enough," he bellowed. "I won't have you coming in here and stirring up trouble. Evelyn is Sean's wife. She's wealthy, and she can give this family a future. If you can't accept that, maybe you're not part of this family anymore." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. I stared at them, barely recognizing the people who had raised me. "So that's it?" asked quietly, my voice trembling. "You're choosing money over your own children?" Mom avoided my gaze, and Dad simply glared. "Get out," he said, his voice ice cold. "And don't come back until you're ready to apologize to Evelyn and Sean." Tears stung my eyes as I turned and walked away, my legs shaky. The weight of their betrayal settled heavily on my chest. As I left the home I had grown up in, I realized a painful truth. I couldn't change my parents' minds. They were too blinded by the promise of money and status. But I couldn't leave Olivia and Rachel to suffer. I had to find a way to help them, to save them from Evelyn, from our parents' indifference, and from the toxic situation they were trapped in. By chance, I ended up next to James as we refilled our cups. He started making small talk, which somehow shifted to parenting. "You know," he said proudly, "I raised Evelyn to be humble. Never let her flaunt our wealth. She grew up modest, well-mannered, even married a regular guy. She respects everyone, treats them like family." Something inside me snapped. Without saying a word, I pulled out my phone and played a video I had almost forgotten about. The screen showed Evelyn at the dance rehearsal, her face twisted with anger, yelling at me, Olivia, Rachel, and the bridesmaids. "You stupid scum," she screamed. "Pay $10,000 or get out. I won't have you ruining my wedding." James's face went pale as he watched his daughter in the recording. When the video ended, there was silence. I had no idea," James whispered, his voice shaken. "She's always so polite around me. I thought I raised her right." I braced myself, expecting him to get defensive or angry. Instead, he turned to me, his eyes pleading. "Please," he said, "tell me everything." I did. I told him about Evelyn's cruel comments, how she treated Olivia and Rachel like unpaid servants, and how she turned my parents against me. As I spoke, James seemed to age before my eyes. When I finished, he shook his head in disbelief. "I'm so sorry," he said quietly. "I've failed as a father. Please, let me try to fix this." Before I could respond, he stood up abruptly and said, "Come with me." We drove to Sean and Evelyn's house in silence. James's knuckles were white as he gripped the steering wheel. When we walked inside, the scene was worse than I imagined. Olivia was wearing a maid's uniform, scrubbing the floors, while Evelyn lounged on the couch, barking orders. James lost it. "Evelyn, what is the meaning of this?" he bellowed. "How dare you treat people like this? Your own family." Evelyn's shock quickly turned to anger. "I won't apologize to servants," she snapped, pointing at Olivia. James's face turned purple with rage. "That's it. You're cut off. No more money, no more house. I'm ashamed to call you my daughter." Sean tried to step in, his voice desperate. "Sir, please, the girls don't mind helping out. It's no big deal." But James turned on him. "And you, letting your wife treat your sisters like that? You're fired. Both of you. Out of my sight." Then James looked at me and Olivia, his voice softening. "I'm so sorry for everything. Please, let me help fix this." As we left, Evelyn's angry screams faded into the distance. I felt a mix of relief and sadness. The fallout was swift and harsh. Instead of seeing the truth, my parents doubled down on their support for Sean and Evelyn. They were furious at me, blaming me for ruining Sean's easy life. "How could you do this to your own brother?" Mom cried over the phone. "He had everything, and now it's gone because of you." Dad was even worse. "You've always been jealous of Sean," he snapped. "Well, congratulations, you've destroyed this family. Don't bother coming around anymore. You're not welcome." Their words stung, but I wasn't surprised. They had made their choice long ago, and it wasn't me or my sisters. I focused on finishing the project that had kept me in my hometown for so long. When it was done, I packed up my apartment and left without looking back. I found a new job in another city, eager for a fresh start. Months went by. I built a new life, made new friends, and tried to forget the family that had turned their backs on me. But I couldn't stop worrying about Olivia and Rachel. I sent them texts, but their replies were always short and distant. Then one rainy night, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Olivia and Rachel standing there, soaked and holding suitcases. "Julie," Olivia said, her voice shaky. "We need your help." Over cups of hot tea, they told me everything. Sean and Evelyn, now broke and without jobs, had moved back in with our parents. But instead of being humbled, Evelyn had become even more controlling. "She treats the house like her personal kingdom," Rachel explained. "And us? We're just her servants." "Mom and Dad don't do anything," Olivia added. "They're so afraid of Sean leaving that they let Evelyn do whatever she wants." My heart broke for them. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I asked. They looked guilty. "We were ashamed," Rachel admitted. "And scared. Evelyn threatened to make things worse if we contacted you. But we couldn't take it anymore," Olivia said. "Please, Julie, can we stay with you? Just until we find jobs and a place of our own." I didn't hesitate. "Of course, you can stay as long as you need." It wasn't easy at first. My apartment was small, and we all had to adjust to living together as adults. But over time, we found our rhythm and started to rebuild our lives. I helped them work on their resumes and practiced interview questions with them. We stayed up late, talking through all the years of hurt and misunderstandings. Weeks turned into months. Olivia got a job at a local bookstore, and Rachel started taking classes at a community college nearby. They insisted on helping with rent and groceries, even though I told them it wasn't necessary. One night, as we sat around the dinner table, laughing at a silly story, I realized something. Our parents might never change. Sean and Evelyn might stay the same. But that was okay. We had each other, and that was enough. Looking at my sisters, strong and finally free to be themselves, I knew we'd be okay. Whatever came next, we'd face it together, the way a real family should. Then James turned to me and Olivia, his tone softening. "I'm so sorry for everything," he said. "Please, let me help fix this." As we walked out, Evelyn's furious screams echoed behind us. I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. While it was satisfying to see James confront Evelyn, it didn't feel like a victory. The damage she had caused couldn't be undone so easily. The fallout was swift and harsh. Rather than acknowledging Evelyn's and Sean's wrongdoings, my parents doubled down on their loyalty to them. "You've ruined your brother's life," Mom shouted over the phone. "How could you be so cruel?" Dad was just as unforgiving. "You've always been jealous of Sean," he accused. "Well, congratulations, you've destroyed this family. Don't ever come back." Their words stung, but I wasn't surprised. They had chosen money and appearances over their own daughters. I focused on finishing my project and preparing to leave town for good. Once the work was done, I packed up my apartment and started fresh in a new city. The months that followed were a time of rebuilding. I threw myself into my new job, made friends, and tried to let go of the pain my family had caused. Still, I couldn't stop worrying about Olivia and Rachel. I sent them occasional texts, but their responses were brief and distant. I figured they were still under Evelyn's thumb, or too scared to reach out. Then one rainy night there was a knock on my door. I opened it to find Olivia and Rachel, soaked to the bone and clutching suitcases. "Julie," Olivia said, her voice trembling, "we need your help." I pulled them inside and made them hot tea. As they warmed up, they explained everything. Sean and Evelyn, now penniless and jobless, had moved back in with my parents. But rather than showing humility, Evelyn had grown even more domineering. "She treats the house like her own kingdom," Rachel said, her voice shaking with anger. "And us? We're just her servants." Mom and Dad, desperate to keep Sean and Evelyn happy, turned a blind eye. "Why didn't you come to me sooner?" I asked. Rachel looked away. "We were ashamed," she admitted. "And Evelyn threatened to make things worse if we contacted you." "But we can't take it anymore," Olivia added, her voice breaking. "Please, Julie, can we stay with you? Just until we find jobs and a place of our own." "Of course," I said without hesitation. "You can stay as long as you need." It wasn't easy at first. My apartment was small, and we had to adjust to living together as adults. But over time, we found a rhythm and started to rebuild our lives. I helped them with resumes and practiced interview questions with them. We stayed up late, unpacking years of pain and hurt. Weeks turned into months. Olivia got a job at a local bookstore, and Rachel started taking classes at a community college nearby. They insisted on contributing to rent and groceries, even though I told them it wasn't necessary. One night, as we sat around the dinner table, laughing over a silly story, I realized something profound. Our parents might never change. Sean and Evelyn might remain the same. But that was okay. We had each other, and that was enough. Looking at my sisters, strong, independent, and finally free to be themselves, I knew we'd be okay. Whatever came next, we'd face it together. That's what real family does. Then he looked at me and Olivia, his voice softening. "I'm so sorry for everything. Please, let me help fix this." As we left, Evelyn's angry screams faded behind us. I felt a mix of emotions, relief and vindication, but also sadness. It didn't feel like a real victory. The fallout was swift and harsh. Instead of acknowledging the truth, my parents doubled down on their support for Sean and Evelyn. They were furious at me, blaming me for ruining Sean's cushy life. "How could you do this to your own brother?" Mom cried over the phone. "He had everything, and now it's gone because of you." Dad was even harsher. "You've always been jealous of Sean," he snapped. "Well, congratulations. You've destroyed this family. Don't bother coming around anymore. You're not welcome." Their words cut deep, but I wasn't surprised. They had made their choice long ago, and it wasn't me or my sisters. I focused on completing the project that had kept me in my hometown for so long. Once it was finished, I packed up my apartment and left without looking back. I found a new job in another city and eagerly embraced the fresh start. Months passed as I built a new life, made friends, and tried to move on from the family that had turned its back on me. But I couldn't stop worrying about Olivia and Rachel. I reached out with texts, but their replies were brief and distant, as if they were still afraid of being caught in Evelyn's web. Then, one rainy evening, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Olivia and Rachel standing there, drenched and clutching suitcases. "Julie," Olivia said, her voice trembling, "we need your help." Over steaming cups of tea, they poured out their story. Sean and Evelyn, now broke and jobless, had moved back in with our parents. But instead of being humbled, Evelyn had only grown more domineering. "She treats the house like her own kingdom," Rachel said bitterly. "And us? We're just her servants." "Mom and Dad won't do anything," Olivia added, her voice heavy with frustration. "They're so scared of Sean leaving that they let Evelyn do whatever she wants."
My heart broke for them.
"Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. They exchanged guilty looks. "We were ashamed," Rachel admitted quietly. "And scared. Evelyn threatened to make things worse if we contacted you. But we couldn't take it anymore," Olivia said, her voice breaking. "Please, Julie, can we stay with you? Just until we find jobs and a place of our own." I didn't hesitate. "Of course, you can stay. For as long as you need." It wasn't easy at first. My apartment was small, and we all had to adjust to living together as adults. But over time, we found our rhythm and began to rebuild our lives. I helped them with their resumes and practiced interview questions late into the night. Together, we unpacked years of pain, talking through misunderstandings and healing old wounds. Weeks turned into months. Olivia landed a job at a local bookstore, and Rachel enrolled in classes at a nearby community college. Despite my protests, they insisted on contributing to rent and groceries. One night, as we sat around the dinner table, laughing at a silly story, a profound realization hit me. Our parents might never change. Sean and Evelyn might remain the same. But that was okay. We had each other, and that was enough. Looking at my sisters strong, independent, and finally free, I knew we would be okay. Whatever challenges lay ahead, we'd face them together, the way a real family should.